Welcome everybody. This talk is about SystemJS and JSPM. And before we'll get into either of those two projects, first overview, what are those? Basically, SystemJS and JSPM together form a package management solution for the browser. And they are more opinionated and more forward-oriented than the current approaches, because it basically builds on how modules will work in the next version of JavaScript. But that also makes them a much better solution than what we have in Ember CLI with Bower as a package manager. And both projects are mainly developed by Guy Bedford, who has, by the way, if you want to get further into those two projects, good talks on YouTube from several JavaScript conferences, simply recordings of his talks, in which he explains the stuff more. And also, because he really does a good job at maintaining those projects, you can expect an answer if you have an issue on GitHub in less than a day. I already posted several questions and some issues, and you can really bet on great feedback and fast feedback. So, okay, now the overview part before we can get into, I'm assuming a bit of knowledge there. I won't go deeply into those, and it's very broad and it's an overview, so bear with me if I'm not detailed enough in some areas. Simply don't ask. Okay, but module systems. Module system basically consists of two ingredients. That's a syntax for defining modules. That's where you declare your module, what you use to declare modules, and a loader. That's the mechanism you use to load modules. Okay, JavaScript as a language, unlike maybe Java or Python, hasn't its own module system, at least today. And because that's the case, there are some community efforts to add a module system to JavaScript. The most important one for the browser is AMD, the asynchronous module definition. That's also what is used in Ember CLI under the hood. And also a good loader for AMD modules is Require.js. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe not. Common.js, that's probably the most popular module system around, because it's the module system which Node uses. The Node module system is Common.js. And the Node module loader loads Common.js modules. But now people all had also the idea, hey, those Common.js modules are really neat, and we want to have them also in the browser, and thus Browserify was born, and it's a solution for having Common.js modules also in the browser. But the next version of JavaScript, ECMAScript 6, ES6, will have its own module system, and in Ember CLI we are already using the syntax of that module system, and this system will be the future in JavaScript. It will be the module system of the future. So if you're building something new, it might be a good idea to already build in ES6 and transpile to those other module systems if you need to support them. Okay, since we are in Ember, in an Ember meetup, I want to talk about how it's done in Ember CLI, because that's obviously very related to Ember. And under the hood, okay, first we write the modules, we create a file. A file is a module, and we compile them internally. Ember CLI takes the file, which is written with the ES6 module system syntax, and it compiles it to the different syntax, the AMD syntax, and then it concatenates all those transpiled modules. And at the very end, obviously, because just sending the modules to the client obviously is not enough, we have to somehow start the whole thing, and that's when we do a require call. Also, that in Ember CLI, it's currently done this way. Okay, in Ember CLI, as I said, all those modules are AMD modules and get concatenated, and then we have two script files, one for vendor scripts, all the libraries, third-party libraries, and one for the application scripts. And at the end of the application script file, this file right here gets appended, right there. Obviously, you can also see there that we have this define, and in there, yeah, well, this define is AMD syntax. You already see the AMD exposed there. And then this is the require call is the loader mechanism for AMD modules. It's the loader we use in Ember CLI. So that's how it's done. This require call starts the whole application. It loads the app module. This is just a placeholder. It loads the app module, its default export, and it creates the application. And that module obviously has its own dependencies, and that depends on others and others. And all dependencies get executed, and it starts the application. This approach, because I want to outline the pros of the system loader, I will present in a minute, has obviously some downsides. One of them is lazy loading is not really supported. How we load things is that we send those two script files to the client, and then every module is there. But it would be nice if we could send script files that contain a certain amount of modules, and if any of those modules is needed, then and only then it fetches the script file. That would be the ideal thing, that we have a big bundle of script files and only load when needed, load them when needed. And some features are probably lost in the transpilation step to AMD. ES6 has a circular reference support, and I'm pretty certain that that's lost. But maybe not. I haven't checked, but if I had to guess, it's lost. Okay, ES6 modules. As I said before, syntax and loader, and the syntax is a thing that we are already using in Ember CLI. So we are probably familiar with the ES6 syntax, but for those who are not, or those who want to refresh their memory, there is this great website, jsmodules.io. And that website basically goes through all the things that, or the most important things about ES6 modules. It tells you what the default export is, what named exports are, how to import other modules, and how to even attach all exports of a module here, fs, onto a namespace. I won't go through this now. Just read through it in your own time. And the main focus of this talk is going to be about the loader, because transpiling everything to AMD, shipping everything up front, and using an AMD loader isn't the final solution. If you think about it, it's quite clear why that is probably the case. Okay, now some terminology. A module is a unit of code. Usually we put it in its own file. A package is a collection of modules. You could also maybe call it a directory. So some modules together, it's the package, and a package is usually installed via package manager because we need that for convenience. The system loader, and don't confuse that with SystemJS. The system loader is the loader that the browser of the future will implement to load modules. Currently, none of the modern browsers implement it, and the reason for that is quite clear because the standard isn't finalized. It's still in flux, but there is a polyfill that implements the spec as it's defined as of today. So it stays in sync with the spec, and it basically implements the spec line by line how it's supposed to happen. Okay, SystemJS are just extensions to the system loader, because in other languages the modular system has been around forever. There are probably in not many of them good hooks for doing stuff, but because JavaScript now gets its module system so late, we already know what we would like to have. And though this, so the system loader has really cool hooks for doing stuff. And as I will show later, you can even override it in such a way that it could load a style sheet. That's pretty awesome. Okay, JSPM is the module, the package manager. It's a thing like NPM, the node package manager, or like Bower, but Bower is not so good as JSPM. And I will illustrate that later. JSPM, apart from installing modules, has also some cool tools for performing some tasks related to modules. And also there's JSPM.io, which is an online service that you can use to import modules without installing them locally. So you don't have a package manager and don't download it, but instead you make a call to JSPM.io, and that goes to GitHub then and loads it from there, and it's pretty awesome. But I won't demo that. But you should definitely check it out. Okay, enough talk. Let's see how it looks. And it's pretty underwhelming. It's simply that line down there, system.import module name, returns a promise. Okay, let's start from the top. There is a file called myModule, and it exports a class. This is a named export, by the way. The class is called Q. Okay, what's a class? That's ES6 syntax, never mind. It could be a function, it could be a variable, whatever. But in this case, it's a class. And this class has a constructor which logs something in the console. So, we would assume that if we create an instance of the class, like down there, that then this gets logged out to the console, and that's also the case. Okay, because the system.import call returns a promise, we have two cases. The case of the success, where the promise fulfills. In this case, the M is the module, and of course it has the Q class there. And then we can create one instance, and this logs it to the console. Also, if, for example, that file doesn't exist, or that the server is down, or for some reason this module cannot be fetched, we have the catch function there. That's basic promise stuff. We could, for example, handle it in a smart fashion, or like that, simply print it to the console. Okay. Now you might wonder, okay, that's polyfill, but that right there is invalid JavaScript syntax as of today, because it's the upcoming syntax. It's the module system syntax, and it even has the class syntax, which is still in flux. The module syntax, system syntax is pretty stable. The last big change was I think 2 months ago. That was the import star change. But never mind that. it broke some things. But now the module system syntax is pretty much done. The people who designed it are quite happy with it, I guess, and it's pretty cool. But the class syntax, yeah, and this thing, what I'm saying is it needs to be transpiled into JavaScript that the current browsers understand. And the polyfill works together with tracer. So the module gets loaded from the server, and in the browser on the fly it gets transpiled into today's JavaScript. And if you're using just the module system syntax, it works down to Internet Explorer 8. That's pretty neat. So you can use it today. And as I will show later, you can also eliminate this transpilation step with JSPM. You can eliminate that and do that upfront before serving it to the client. But obviously in development, that's not a very smart thing to do. Or maybe it is. It depends on your tooling. Demo time. But before I start with my demo, keep in mind this is just a system loader. It's not SystemJS. No SystemJS involved as of now. It's just the polyfill for the upcoming module loader. Okay. So here we are. Demo 1. Okay. 4 files. Module loader, never mind that. Tracer, never mind that. Here a module. It's a default export with a function, and that function is supposed to greet us. So we pass in a name, and it says hello name. It concatenates that and alerts us. That's pretty simple. Index.js looks like that. 2 script imports. First, tracer. The ES6 module loader depends on traces, so we have to import that first. That's that file. And then the module loader. And now we can use the system.import. Can ask for the hello module, get that, and call the default function. It's how it's called if you do it like that.
One question.
Yes.
Why does it not automatically assign the default export to the...
Because you might not want that. You might not want that. Because
what's the, like, if there's only the default export?
Yes, there is also there is maybe that will be a thing of the future. People have thought about that, but it's simply not worth it, or at least in my opinion, because this is then simply the module object. It's simpler because you for most applications you have one call of this type, because when you load that hello module, all its imports, its dependencies get loaded as well. And there you obviously use that import syntax we all know. That's the nice syntax. And for the system loader, you don't really have many places where you'd use that. But there is maybe a way coming to specify that the thing that gets passed to the function is already the default export if that module wants that. Okay. So it's opt-in. But obviously that would also imply that the other named exports, accessing those wouldn't be possible anymore. Because they are not there then. Because then this default object is the main export. So,
but could there be something else defined on that module? On that hello module, for example?
Of course.
Could there be something next to default?
Of course. If I will demo that separately, but if I remove that, it's called hello as export.
Yeah,
okay, let's demo that, and then I want to show that it's as simple as that. Okay, and then this catch is simply error it out. Right. And okay, now this demo will be pretty underwhelming. And yes, it echoes it out because I passed him as name Ember.js Ember Munich Meetup. I get hello, comma that. Okay. Now probably the answer to your question: can I name it differently? Can I add multiple of them? Of course you can. But then, of course, it's hello, and that works as well. Pretty simple mechanism. Turns a promise. Elegant.
Again, the question was actually whether there might be some like module meta information or so on that hello object there, or whether default is the only property that exists on.
Right. The second one. The second one. This one is a module instance. It holds all the export and nothing else.
So in that case, default is really the only property that exists on that.
Right.
Okay.
There's nothing else. There's really nothing else. All the things that object.prototype has won't be there. So it's really a clean object. Let's demo that. Okay, maybe not in the polyfill, but I think in the spec it's planned that it's a super clean object. It's nothing.
It's probably not possible to build that in polyfill.
That is possible. Object create null. But maybe it's also not planned because they decided against that for some reason. Yeah. I would have thought that I had read that, but apparently it's not the case. Or maybe it is. Okay, let's continue. Or a question.
Of course. Are we going to get the module object if we just call a system import without calling like then and getting in through?
No, that returns a promise. It's asynchronous. It has to go to the server and load the module. We can't do that in a synchronous fashion because that would block everything.
Okay, yeah, that's true. But how like two different modules would interact? Do you have to? If
you do that, then it's that case where you simply have these import statements, the syntax in the module. For example, you import Ember from Ember or surface from famous or surface, something like that. Then you can use that. And obviously, those modules won't exist now, but those are two of the most important modules of mine in the last 2 weeks. Ember.js is leading because nearly every module needs that. Anyway, any other questions? Perfect. Okay, system loader. System.import, that's the most important method. Of course, there are others, but system.import, that's that way how we load modules. And in the module, then we have normal import-export syntax. Now let's talk about SystemJS. And as I said before, SystemJS adds stuff to the system loader because the system loader is already built in such a way so that it can easily be extended in a clean way. Let's go through them. The most important thing is that it unifies all the module formats we have. Of course, ES6 is coming. That's the ideal format a module is written in. But with SystemJS, we can load common JS modules, and that are basically all the modules on NPM. So all modules that don't depend on any server-side stuff like file system access or something are things that we can load using SystemJS. And then AMD, for example, Famous would be a project that's written in AMD. With SystemJS, we can install the Famous framework directly from GitHub using JSPM. I will show later how to install things with JSPM. So AMD, and obviously globals, that's the way we have always done linking between scripts. Modules like jQuery export a global, and we can also have modules that export a global without adding it to the real global scope then, I think. Also for deployment, as I said before, transpiling it on the client is good for production, but maybe not so good for mobile devices after you've deployed your application. So, because the ES6 module systems has some pretty neat features like circular reference support, this is not quite as easy to put it in the form that so that it's doing that transpilation up front. And that's because and that's why we have system.register, and that's a meta format which has solved this basically. So it's a format that runs in current ES3 browsers, or in current browsers down to ECMAScript 3, that's IE8 plus. That's nothing. Okay. Other cool feature is bundles. There, in this example, I have the build core bundle. This module, it's a file then under build core.js. Then it loads build core.js then, and it loads that file if it needs either jQuery, app/app, app-dep, lib, third party, blah blah. If it needs either of those 4 modules, then it fetches the bundle. If it's already fetched, then it has it already. So that's nice. Until HTTP 2 arrives, then bundling will be even bad, because with HTTP 2 we really want different files, a file for everything, because that's basically cache optimized. So that's the ideal thing then. But currently, we want one big file or several big files, and only load those that are needed. Plugins. As I said before, it's pretty cool to load other things like CSS files with the module system syntax, or in this case with the loader syntax. So we can do that as well. The exclamation mark is there because the plugin is called CSS, and if that plugin was called otherwise, was named differently, then we specify it after the exclamation mark. So it's exclamation mark, either nothing, and it's the same as the extension, or it's exclamation mark and then the module, which is the plugin which implements how the thing should be loaded. Okay, map. Here is the jQuery module, and if we load that, it really loads location /4/jQuery. That's obvious for, yes.
Could that location be like a remote location? Could it actually be something?
Yes. There is 2 different things. You can then also define different paths for. With JSPM, you have 2 things then. You have modules that need to be fetched and modules that are inner-applicate. With JSPM.io, those remote modules then are sent to JSPM.io, and it goes then to GitHub or NPM and loads the module and sends you the module. Or it's a local module of your project. And there is a path feature, but I don't list that there because that's already a feature. It's not in the spec, but it's implemented in the Polyfill project. So it's not a SystemJS feature. But this is then the path feature. So this is just for mapping modules, and where the thing goes then is even done in a different way. Because it's a different thing, and because we already know those things we will encounter, we have this very smart architecture of the loader, which allows you to extend it in all the right places. So that's a path thing there. And I think that hook that gets overwritten is the fetch hook or something. There's a normalize hook for normalizing module names, locate hook for finding it, and a fetch hook for getting it, and an instantiate hook. I'm not sure about, but there are 5 or 6 hooks that can be overwritten individually and extended as needed. Also, versioning. That's important in conjunction with JSPM. It allows you to have semver versions. So if you depend on 2.0 or higher, then it would also be happy with 2.1 or something. Version support. And it's much like this stuff we have in Node, because we can have different versions of the same package at the same time. Because the one thing needs the old version and the other thing needs the new version, and then the one gets and the other gets that. It can be done using SystemJS. Okay, now a demo. That demo won't be complicated, it won't demo every feature. Okay, and it's called demo 2. Now, in this project I have 3 files. As before, I have the module loader and tracer. Tracer for transpiling, module loader for the implementation of the system loader. And now new is SystemJS, which extends the system loader. Let's look at the indexed HTML. And as you can see, I depend on system and not on the not on tracer and ES6 module loader. And that's because it's not needed to depend on those. If I depend on SystemJS, what it does, it simply adds those for me. So it will import, it's for convenience, so that you only have to write system.js. And it also loads tracer and the polyfill. Okay, now in this example, it's the same code as before. In this example, I map hi to hello, and now I import the hi module. And as we expect, we get the hello module back and can call the default export or error it out to the console. By the way, if you've wondered why this timer is there, it's because if I threw the error synchronously, it would go into the nirvana. Because it's how promises work. That's actually pretty cool, but you have to be aware of that.
What is?
That's a promise talk on YouTube. There are many good promise talks out there. But I just wanted to mention this set timer trick. So if you watch this video later, you can see the set timer trick again.
But where this variable error coming from? Isn't it has to be defined?
Yes, that's yes. Good question. Yes. But it hadn't failed so far, and so it didn't notice it. But you're obviously right that it needs to be an argument there. Yes.
But the system.map thing, is it as well good for cleaning up the namespace, or I don't really understand what the benefits are?
For example, if you want to map Ember to GitHub Ember /Ember @master or something, then it gets complicated, and we don't want that. Also, JSPM does create some of those mappings for you because they are needed. You define it in a package JSON what you want, and JSPM creates the config that you that this implies then. So, yes, I haven't demoed it, so let's demo it. Okay, let's add a 2 there. See? Okay. And I did also demo something else. Can anyone guess what it was? Okay, no guesses? Look at that, it's a common JS module. It's not ES6 syntax anymore. I use common JS syntax. SystemJS looked at it and it detected common JS syntax and it does common JS then automatically without doing anything. It detects the default export there. Pretty simple. Okay. That's it for this demo, I guess. That's all I wanted to show. Any questions? Perfect.
Yeah, excuse me.
Yes.
One question. This high, you said import high and map high. Why is it important to map it to high and why can't you just use...
To demo the mapping feature.
So it's just for the...
It's for the demo because I can't demo the mapping feature without using it.
Theoretically, you could have written import hello.
Yes, but I did that before and
okay, so
and to demo it, before we had that, we simply did hello, and now we can also do hi, and we get hello as well. If I did hello there, it obviously also works because it's the hello module.
Okay,
but
so
I can now also do hi because hi is an alias to the hello module.
Okay, I missed that, sorry. Okay, thanks.
Could you? I mean, that's very direct, but if you had a second module, could you first like hello to
yes.
hi, and then you can...
And it doesn't even matter what order. You can map things around. Okay, it doesn't. If it's a circle, then obviously it doesn't work. But if you map things from one to one another, and it doesn't matter which order, it works.
Okay, cool.
It's pretty cool, and it's also done in practice.
Okay.
And you'll see the use case in the next demo.
Right.
It's as simple as that. And it's even possible to map a module to something else within a module and just within a module. So that because one module might depend on jQuery in camel case, written in camel case, and you have installed it as without camel case or lowercase, then you could just map it to the different writing in that module that needs that. Because maybe it's a third-party module and you don't have access to that, so you can map that around as needed. But generally, you don't touch that, JSPM creates it, and then you're happy with that. Yes. Okay. Now, JSPM. JSPM is a package manager, and because it is a package manager for managing JavaScript module, it very much works like Bower or NPM. You have an install command, and that's how you install modules. And the cool thing about JSPM is that it doesn't have its own registry. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. The NPM registry is already filled properly, and basically every project is on GitHub. And with JSPM, you can simply install stuff from GitHub. That's super neat. If you don't want, you don't even have to use a real registry like, for example, NPM is. And installing things from GitHub makes it also possible to install private stuff, because you can give a JSPM your GitHub credentials, and then you obviously have access then to private stuff that lies on GitHub. And JSPM is developed for working with SystemJS. The feature sets of both are tailored to work in harmony. And all this stuff, this configuration for mapping, for example, is usually done by JSPM. You can change the things, the configuration, and JSPM won't simply override everything after you install something. It will simply add things, but generally you are happy with the things that JSPM defines for you. It's human readable, and you can change it if you want, but generally you have the config file auto-generate. Anyway, I'll show that anyway. No more slides for JSPM. Right, next demo. Okay, now this is the layout now. Okay, index.html includes SystemJS, now located in the JSPM_packages folder, and this folder isn't there, as you might have noticed. And also the config.js, which is also not there yet. And then we load the app module. Right. And the app module looks like that. It imports Ember from Ember and imports the style CSS. And the style CSS sets the background to cyan. That's greenish tone. And now the package JSON. In JSPM, you can define everything for JSPM in the JSPM namespace there. But if you want, you can also remove that. Both works. How it's implemented is that it uses it from the top level scope, but only after it has merged all the stuff that is in JSPM management. So it takes the global scope, merges the JSPM namespace in there, and then it reads it like that. Okay. Then you can have dependencies. And in this case, CSS, that's for loading CSS. And then Ember. And as you see, it's from GitHub, and it's my name there. It really should be possible to install it of the components/Ember repository, but not at the moment. I already supplied the pull request that adds the necessary changes. That's about 3 or 5 lines of code, not much. It just modifies the package JSON of the Ember module package to add the JSPM fields that are necessary. Okay, and now let's see it in action. This is the things I want to have. And now JSPM should create for me, for one, a config.js, pre-configured with the things that are defined there. And it should obviously fetch the modules. Let's see. Yes. So as you can see, it's not hard to use. Okay. JSPM packages folder, that's nice. Now the config.js. As you can see, it overrides the paths so that all local stuff gets loaded from the main folder, but the GitHub : stuff, for example this one down here, redirects the request to JSPM packages GitHub. In this case, major breakfast for Ember stuff. It's simply folders. And JSPM basically creates that JSPM packages folder, and that's all JSPM does. Of course, it also writes the config.js, but then at runtime, it's all SystemJS. SystemJS reads this config and does the things accordingly. Okay, now you can see that the Ember module, the Ember package maps to this one there. CSS expands to this one. And then, I think you asked it, Ember goes to that, and this goes then, has additional configuration for the things in it. Handlebars goes to that, and handlebars is only in that module. Why? Because I didn't mention it there. If I had mentioned handlebars there, it would also be there in the top level scope. Okay, and then versions, that's necessary if you have different versions of the same package, then you can there select what versions should be used. You can basically resolve all conflicts up front. You can say, tell SystemJS what to do if a version is needed. In this case, there are no conflicts, so never mind.
Question. In the end, you have this map to CSS, GitHub, SystemJS, and so forth. In the browser, does it then call the original GitHub link?
No.
No? Okay.
See it there? GitHub : * means go to this folder somewhere there.
Also downloads the code from you.
No, although it mentions GitHub there, this module folder is already populated.
Okay,
And it simply goes to that file. Never mind, it could be called GitHub.
Yeah, but what are the map to GitHub there? Or if GitHub is already in the folder, is it to map to the folder itself?
It maps to the folder.
Okay.
GitHub : * maps to JSPM package / GitHub folder itself. Yes.
Right. I mean the second map does also map to the folder.
It's the folder.
Okay.
So that versions conflict would version conflicts or different versions that are required automatically be resolved, if possible?
Yes. I'm pretty sure about that. JSPM knows what versions there are and can select them accordingly. But if things don't work out, you can do all.
Something and the other depends on.
You can totally adjust it as needed manually, but JSPM will do the bulk of the work. Good.
Is this like name of branches, or where did you get this information? Which version it is? I mean,
From GitHub.
Sure, but is this a tag or a branch?
It's a semver tag.
It's what?
A semver tag. Okay.
So that's in repository.
Let's check out the jQuery module. Yeah. GitHub jQuery components / jQuery, and if you go to releases, there you see all the version tags.
Okay.
Version tags can have a V, lowercase v. That's also common. That there's a V in front of that, and then the number. But it's always in this format: 3 digits, three integers, separated by colons. It's how the semver standard works, and semver, you can look it up in this document. It's all nicely explained, all the rules.
Yeah, no,
perfect. Good. I haven't demoed it. Anyone wants to see it? I never showed what's in app.js. Let's look at that. Okay, there is okay, I did show that, but the line, it creates an Ember application. So one would assume that all the Ember logs we commonly get now appear in the console. And let's see if that is the case. And as you can see, the background is now set because it uses the CSS plugin to nicely apply that style sheet, and we get all the Ember logs there as we are used to when using Ember. Yes.
What's the syntax with the exclamation mark?
That is
CSS?
for the CSS plugin. Same thing would be that.
Ah, okay.
But because the extension is CSS, it gets it automatic. But I have to write the exclamation mark. And maybe this exclamation mark could disappear in the future.
So if you remove that exclamation mark, would it then
it would search
try
for a
to load
style.css JavaScript module, and it won't find one.
Okay, so it would fail.
It looks like that.
Okay.
Style.css.js isn't found.
So you're saying that's not an ES6 module just created?
But it searches for one. But
yeah, but I mean the exclamation mark
is very essential because
it would be a module
It signifies that a plugin should be used for loading.
Yeah.
I personally don't mind the exclamation mark there, but maybe for common stuff like CSS, it is maybe nicer to not have that. And currently, I think it will disappear in the future because the ideal syntax hasn't this thing, and it doesn't have to be for every dot extension. It just needs to if it sees .css, it should load it as a style sheet, and this will probably be there. I think there is even a pull request already there. Right. Features like that don't escape Guy Bedford's notice.
Isn't it that's the question? How many files or file types you have to support, or you could?
No, if you want support for something, then you simply write a plugin for it, and that plugin then overrides the necessary hooks, and then you get that. So it's pretty simple. Good. Yes. Okay. Now, final thing, and a pretty darn cool thing, is bundling. Now I demonstrate how to use JSPM to bundle everything that's in there into a single file. Let's touch the command in the command line. And it's okay. Anyone guess what the command is for bundling? That's richtig. Okay, I bundle app, the app module, and JSPM will detect that this app module depends on Ember and the CSS plugin. It won't include the style sheet because that doesn't work. Yes. So I could then also define how the file is called. By default, it's called build.js, and I'm happy with that. And I also do inject. What inject does, it configures everything so that we... Okay, I'll simply show you. See, bundles, and it lists all the modules which are in this bundle, and if we access any one of them, it loads the build bundle, build.js, and that's this. And as you can see, this stuff doesn't look like our input, and that's the case because the ES6 syntax gets transpiled away. Now I want to find our app module. Let's see if we can apply. Okay, that doesn't work. Okay, register. No. System.register. App. There we go. As you can see, we have this obscure stuff there, and this is our app module. Okay, now let's try it. It works. And I can prove that it didn't access the app.js by going to the network tab. And as you can see, it just loads the build.js. No app.js. Everything is contained there. Also, you can see that Ember.js is also not appearing. To compare it how it was before, if I remove this stuff, which JSPM automatically created, this was the stuff that gets created if you specify inject. As you can see there, we get different requests. Handlebars, jQuery, Ember, and so on. But with this, we are pretty lightweight. And everything was detected automatically. No matter if we use CommonJS, global, like Ember, or the jQuery, or the handlebars module, those all export a global. Or if you use ES6 syntax or even AMD syntax, it just works. It's pretty neat. Okay, that's basically it for the third demo. Any questions to that?
So you use build to put that in production, right?
Bundle in this case.
Yeah.
And then the bundle, the build.js gets loaded in production.
Okay, so it's, I mean, you don't use it in development, right? It's just final step.
Yes.
When
Okay, but you could set up a build pipeline that does that step automatically for you every time. Every time you change a file, it automatically triggers this command, and then in the browser you already have that. That's also possible. And maybe you also want that because you're continually testing it on mobile devices, and then you have it's a bit slower if all that stuff gets loaded over Wi-Fi. So you might also want that during development. But you need to automate that. Without automating it, it's not so good. But the cool thing is that all this stuff gets transpiled up front. And that also means that you don't have to ship the tracer compiler with your application. Then it suffices to include tracer runtime. That's, as you might guess, just the runtime, not the compiler. Okay, to put it in relation with Ember.js, the big pros are it has very clean integration with third-party modules that can depend on projects, on packages from GitHub directly. That's super nice. Also very nice if you have your private modules. And obviously the ES6 loader is the mechanism that we will use in the future. So it makes sense to switch to that. But Ember CLI really makes the development for Ember applications very easy. And because there is a lack of tooling that automates those steps, it's maybe not the ideal solution right now. But Stefan Penner already expressed interest in adding the system loader to Ember CLI. But no active work is done on that currently. But we might get that in the future because it makes sense. It's the loader mechanism of the future. That way we do it right now is pretty bad, actually.
Has he put it on the
It's not
milestone
clean.
or something?
No, probably to wonder though. Certainly to wonder. Now,
it would probably be giant refactory. Basically, all of Ember CLI
yes,
kind of depends.
probably yes, because it makes sense to also switch to JSPM then completely, dump power and switch to JSPM because JSPM really works nicely with the ES6 modules. It manages dependencies nicely, and as you can see, it also has some nice shortcut commands. But these things could then also be integrated into Ember CLI, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm using it in my project, and I really enjoy using it because it has cool features like CSS loading. That's pretty neat, and it also feels good to use the real mechanism and not some hacked together solution, transpiled it to AMD and load it in. It's also nice if you have circular references. I currently don't have any in my app, but I had some before, and it basically just works. This is really a really cool thing. And yeah, that's basically it. It's the end of my talk. Any other questions? No.